Hey, everybody, welcome to I Love This Flick, the podcast in which we love flicks, the blues, and Polish sausages. I'm your host, Josh Pfizer.
And I'm Tanner Randall.
And I'm going to try to do a Chicago accent.
No, just like Dan Aykroyd for most of this movie.
Thank you all for joining us on another episode of I Love This Flick, and we are starting off what do you call it? Flopurary?
Flopurary.
Okay. In which we're going to be talking about technically three. We'll get into that in the next episode. But right now we are talking about Tanner's pick for this month.
Hells yeah.
To my chagrin.
Blues Brothers 2000, baby.
February 6th, from Universal Pictures, the Blues are back.
I'm getting the band back together.
The last time they played anywhere, they were charged with grand larceny, felonious motor vehicle assault, and damages in excess of $20 million. And you are asking me if I want to join this band?
I could show you all the moves.
My God! Help us!
And this is Mighty Mac, the new lead singer in the band.
I said, hey.
John Goodman, Joe Morton, James Brown, Aretha Franklin, B.B. King, Paul Shaver, Erykah Badu, Travis Tritt, Bo Diddley, Dr. John, Steve Winwood, Wilson Pickett, Blues Traveler, Johnny Lang, and many more.
The Blues Brothers Band? I thought you guys were all in jail.
Written by Dan Aykroyd and John Landis. Directed by John Landis.
1998's very own Blues Brothers 2000.
Yep, it was Blues Brothers 2000 in 1998. The follow-up to the classic, the first movie based off Saturday Night Live. Well, they were doing that routine before Saturday Night Live, from what I know. But I would say technically the first Saturday Night Live movie.
Yeah.
Yep.
Not that the characters were characters really on SNL. They were just, it's not like there were sketches with there were the B Brothers. But it's not like there were like sketches about the Blues Brothers. They just came out and performed a song or two because it was a variety show.
Yeah. And then they made a comedy film based around that. That was
arguably just a collection of music videos, but
but good music videos.
I
unlike
love the first one.
Unlike this fucking movie.
Yeah, I absolutely love the original Blues Brothers.
Yes, that is an absolute classic. That is undeniable. This one I have. I'm just gonna say it right. So Tanner, I always go into these no matter what, wanting to find something to like. It's not like there isn't things to like in this movie. It's just that they're outweighed by just like this kind of laziness.
Sure, which is one way to look at this movie.
Oh, what's another?
Another way to look at this movie is that maybe you loved Blues Brothers when you were a little kid.
Oh,
right?
I did not.
All right, so this is what I'm presenting. Maybe Blues Brothers was more formative to you than superhero stuff. Um, Maybe you had a toy Bluesmobile with toy Blues Brothers in it, like that you played with more than your Batman toys. Like maybe this was your energy. Maybe you have autographed apparel of impersonators of the Blues Brothers. Maybe you bought a piece of merchandise at every city that has a House of Blues you've ever been to. I was obsessed with the Blues Brothers as a kid. So my dad, who also loved Blues Brothers, because obviously that's why a 4 or 5-year-old would maybe like Blues Brothers because their dad's really into it, was very excited to take 11-year-old me to go see a Blues Brothers movie. And this movie was specifically made for 11-year-old fans of Blues Brothers. So this is what I found watching this movie is this is that first time. This is the shit I'm nostalgic for. I know this is bad, but I have all the memories of being 11 and seeing of this theater still locked away in my mind palace. And they all came back of just like, oh, I was so excited for this. Thank God I was only 11 and didn't know what good movies were, right? Like, because I didn't get to be disappointed. I only got to be full of love, which I still have for this movie, even now being able to look at it as a critical nightmare of like just painfully garbagely paced and put together film that I still love.
This movie is 2 fucking hours long.
And it's 10 minutes shorter than the first one.
Yeah, but at least the first one, okay, just to compare and contrast, I think the fact that it was the early careers of everybody involved, Jim Belushi and Dan Aykroyd, and also the director John Landis, that I think the energy really was there.
The
I think
cocaine was there. Yes, that is true.
But just being younger and being hungry at that point,
hungry for more cocaine. Yeah.
Well, look, R.I.P. Jim Belushi, John Belushi. Sorry, Jim Belushi is still alive, unfortunately. But fortunately, he's not in this movie, so we can at least thank our lucky stars that that's not a thing.
Yeah, but also like, the fun thing about who is in this movie is that who always is good and feels good to see is John Goodman.
I would like to agree with you on that, but there was just nothing to his character.
Oh, I think there's something to it, and I'm going to get into it when we get into it.
All right, but they
also, Joe Morton is somebody who I also just every time Joe Morton pops up on something, I'm like, I fucking love Joe Morton.
I'll give you that. Just seeing Joe Morton in something is fantastic.
And a 10-year-old kid who definitely doesn't look kind of a lot like me, definitely wouldn't have inspired me to love this movie as a child at all. Definitely doesn't reflect the apparel I'm currently wearing, which is him.
It's
Love Buster.
I did not care for that kid at all.
He's not a real actor. I love him. It's a child fantasy dream come true. Just gonna hang out with the Blues Brothers.
But yeah, this is takes place 20 years after the events of the first Blues Brothers. Elwood is getting out of jail. Supposedly Jake had gotten out earlier,
mirroring the opening of the last movie where Jake is let out of jail in the intro.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's some competency, right? We're in an era of legacy sequels, and this predates all this legacy sequel bullshit, right? It is a fascinating thing to look at.
Well, to be fair, like legacy sequels weren't exactly uncommon up at that point. I mean, you even have The Color of Money, which is a sequel to the Hustler. You got these a lot in this era. Yeah, and I'll say like that opening sequence is competently shot. It's one of the more the better sequences in the movie. And Elwood doesn't know that John Belushi's dead,
and he has to have the news broken to him by Frank Oz, playing presumably the same cop he played in the first one.
And so he goes back to the orphanage.
He doesn't go back to the orphanage. I think we're forgetting that Willie sends a lady dancer in a convertible to pick him up.
Right.
She's one of Willie's girls. And then they go to the orphanage. This is why I bring this up specifically. They tell you, I'm from the strip club. I'm here to get you, like, I'm here to pick you up. Cut to orphanage. Just so we're clear on how that went. Where we're just like, strip club, what? And gone. We're going to ignore this for about another 25 minutes before we're going to circle back to this.
Horrible. He goes to the orphanage, talks with the nun there. Apparently, Cab Calloway's character from the first movie had a kid who's Joe Morton. He goes to see Joe Morton. Joe Morton's a cop.
I'll say the scene in the orphanage, because also they introduce Buster. So the breakdown to what actually is happening in that scene. He went back to the orphanage to find out about Cab. He finds out about him. Then Sister Mary's like, well, you just got out of prison. Here's a child. Look after him, which is a totally normal thing to do. Because like, oh yeah, you just got out of prison today. Here's a child. But also that is the scene where I completely...
Wait. You're not gay, are you? Because we can't, like, you... You're ex-con, but, you know.
This was the scene where, listening to Dan Aykroyd talk, I realize immediately he does not have the Elwood Blues character at all. Right? Like, he is not anywhere within the same sport as what he is in the first movie, as far as a character, like the voice, the characterization of he's just not Elwood anymore. He is a different person.
Is weird because he didn't stop doing the character after the Blues Brothers. He's supposedly, I think he's had a radio show, a syndicated radio show, for a long time as the character of Elwood. So it's not like he was out of practice.
But that's, I think, what the problem is, because too much of Dan Aykroyd bled into Elwood as opposed to what Elwood was before. So now it's too much of Dan Aykroyd, which then justifies the script of the movie, because modern Dan Aykroyd is a crazy person. He is coked up. Dan Aykroyd was a lot of things, but he was very funny and fairly well regarded as being an easy guy to work with. Modern Dan Aykroyd is very invested in the occult. He
has always been. He comes from a family of cultists.
But now he has he's had several platforms, and he's just not as cool as he once was.
Trying to tell me the guy who has a novelty vodka isn't cool?
And
name 5 other celebrities that have novelty liquors that make them completely uncool after they came out.
Well, The Rock, because he talks about it all the time.
Ryan Reynolds.
Aviation vodka is less cool.
Sean Combs.
I will say the George Clooney tequila is cool. It does make George Clooney cooler that George Clooney has a tequila, but mostly because he doesn't talk about it all the fucking time, and he's not on the advertisement. He just owns a tequila like distillery, and he just sells a tequila, and he doesn't talk about it. He just does it. Cool for you.
No.
Good on
Same
you,
with fucking with Richard Kind.
Yeah.
He doesn't talk about it. He just does it.
I have it. I don't, whatever. It's a thing I do.
Yep. But yeah, they and I'm mainly just getting through the plot as little as there is.
I say there's not going to be a whole lot, because then he goes to Joe Morton. He tells the kid to wait outside. Tells the cop all of his story. Then the cop, let's talk. Come on, Joe Morton's sitting in his office. He's talking about how much he loves his mother and his father, who had recently passed away. I found it striking that the only picture in his office is of Martin Luther King looking directly into the camera. sitting directly
That
behind his
was-
shoulder. What a weird way to frame this. Also,
Yeah.
he just talks about how much he loves his mom and dad. So it seems weird there wouldn't be any pictures of anyone else besides Martin Luther King, unless, I don't know, someone with the subtle tack of a John Landis made this movie or something, with the subtlety of a Landis touch.
We're definitely gonna get into where Landis was in his career at this point.
Somehow still very good for a place where he should not be having a very good career.
No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that is where and basically tosses Elwood out.
Yep. Down 12 stories. They rode in an elevator, presumably with him holding him, threatening him, and then he threw them out the front door. And then Buster pickpockets him, and then they steal his money, and then go buy the cop car from BB King.
Right.
And then go straight to the strip club.
Yes, straight to the strip club with very attractive dancers. I will say they did a great
Almost
job.
like this movie was made for 11-year-old power fantasy. Right when you're starting to get horny, we're going to go see a strip club that doesn't actually have any stripping
because it's weird, a PG-13 movie
and live music and weird choreographed dancing, which is less of any strip club I've been to. It's a little less well put together of a show.
Yeah, I don't think like movies prepare PG-13 movies prepare you for how shoddy most strip clubs are.
And maybe it's just because of where we're at. The strip club capital of the world, the Midwest. But
at least you live in a city that might have some deep
and unfortunately have aged out of my strip club phase and have not obviously had any I don't need to go to that anymore.
Yeah, but you have a city with major sports teams. So,
I've been to Vegas so many times and I've never been to like what would be like a real strip club. And I feel like I should do that at some point.
Maybe
they are like this. Maybe in Chicago, there's a fancy strip club where a live jazz band plays and then women's never take off their tops and just dance in their underwear.
The first time, just off a tangent, the first time I went to a strip club was in Cedar Falls, the now closed down Lumberyard 2. And I go in and it's a BYOB establishment. So they don't have their liquor license. So the women can take off their bottoms. And I was not prepared for that the first time I was there.
I'll say what I wasn't prepared for specifically about that strip club the first time I went there was...
is it the same strip club we're talking about? Because there's only
out by
like
the airport?
handful of them in Iowa.
Yeah, out by the airport in Waterloo. Yeah, I know the one.
Oh, no, you're talking about the Waterloo. I never went there.
Oh, well, so the cool thing
I've heard the stories.
The cool thing about that one is so that's a college town in Iowa, one of the 3 kind of state regent schools. Yeah. So all of the furniture and decorum inside of it is clearly dumpster dived stuff that was thrown out of the dorms at the end of semester. It was also a juice bar, so it was BYOB, so also bottomless, but it was everything in there was clearly like reused, recycled, which is very environmentally cool. So I support that decision. Not a great place to get a lap dance, just mentally trying to do cartwheels around some of the hygienic stuff. But cool nonetheless, I guess, as an environmentalist, feels good.
I will say the other 2 Waterloo strip clubs, Risques and Flirts, were good, decent for the area. Like it's not like we're good.
I don't want to slander anything. I knew people who danced at the gross strip club I just talked about, and they were all wonderful people. So definitely not disparaging the work. That venue is kind of a shoddy, gross venue, though. I ain't gonna sugarcoat that.
Yeah. But anyway, this isn't
strip club talk. I do want to specifically say I believe it's Shan Johnson, who is the black woman who picks up Elwood and like is kind of like the mean female of this part of the movie. She's like an aerobics instructor now. Like she hasn't done really much for movies. She is unbelievably beautiful and really charismatic and good in this. And like when I looked, I'm like, she's had to have been in other stuff because she like really pops. Kind of like she's just got a lot of energy and like I was really into it. And then like, oh, she did like 3 TV shows after this. And then that one I was kind of bummed because she looks great and she completely kind of sucked me in every time she was on screen.
Yeah, and I thought it was just like one of like a cameo that I just couldn't place. Like, oh, she's a musician or a famous dancer or something like that. But no, yeah, she's an actress who unfortunately, like you said, didn't go on to do much
I don't want to
else.
say unfortunately, it was probably a choice, right?
Oh yeah,
Like
yeah.
I tried to do some research. She seems to be a well-to-do like fitness instructor for the celebs. Like if that is her calling, more hey, get out of the industry. It sucks. So like, hey,
I'm sure
get
like
a
she gets
job that
paid a
you're
lot.
happy
Yeah.
doing and can make money on.
Yep. But yeah, the club is apparently in debt to the Russian mob, which is the thing about this movie is like I say these kind of outlandish things and they're played so like they're so downplayed in the movie.
Yep.
Which is just like even when we get to the Nazis led by Daryl Hammond, they're just not as ridiculous as the Illinois Nazis from the first movie.
Well, that's because I'm going to save my thoughts till we get to that one.
Okay.
I found that scene so much more chilling now than I did the first time I had seen this movie.
Yeah, well, I think that's also that's also what I had a problem with is just like look, Nazis are never like in real life, funny to be around, but like at least the Illinois Nazis were like in full fucking garb. But yeah, they and this is where we get introduced to John Goodman in the least the they just he just pops up. They don't introduce him. They don't even introduce his character before he's really who he is before he sings. He's just like there. He helps Elwood dispose of the gangsters, and then he's on stage. Like that's all we know about him.
So I believe this was my reading of this movie, which I can assume you haven't seen this movie in probably some time, right?
I've never seen this. This is my first time seeing the
first time seeing it. Okay. I probably watch this movie every year. I love this movie, but it's like a put on in the background while I'm cleaning. Because I do like most of the music in it.
The music's great because it's legendary musicians all through the movie.
And just like the first movie, like I feel like once I put on the first Blues Brothers, I inevitably do want to. They are so tied to me because I was again 11 when this came out, and a big part of my personality between 6 and 10 was the Blues Brothers. So like I they're just tied together to me as like one experience. I can't separate them. So I love putting this on and listening to the music. I love Mac's song, Looking for a Fox. That's probably my second favorite song on the soundtrack. I believe after watching it this time that John Goodman, I believe the character was written to be a simpleton. He may not mentally be all there. And I feel like there was maybe some stuff in the movie that maybe blatantly said that was, I can't believe I'm saying this about a Landis movie, tastefully cut from being in the movie to like, because if it would have been blatantly stated, it would have been like, why would you even, this is unnecessary. And instead it's just kind of an unspoken thing because it's the only way to justify having John Goodman's most of his lines be one or two words, which is the Elwood energy. Like Elwood in the first movie is just very much like that's most of his energy other than when he like breaks and gives a couple monologues. He's the strong silent one and Jake's so the role reverse that, but John Goodman can't be stoic because he's a big old softy, right? Like John Goodman's a lovable, so he's got to be kind of like a nice, quiet, simple guy, which is I don't understand. There is nothing to that character. There's also nothing to Cab's character, and again, I think Joe Morton is really fucking good in this. Like
Joe Morton is doing the best he can,
doing so much with the worst things he could be like asked to do. So the two of them, I do feel like get the shortest shrift in this, just because like there's nothing as an actor, what's on the page Like, what could John Goodman have done? Like, there's his line is, that's a good idea, Elwood. That's his one line in the first 3 scenes we have with him. Like, what do? You can't do anything.
Yeah. And
boy, does he sing Looking for a Foxwell.
Yeah, it is just like you have a John Goodman at like, this is right after probably during the last season of Roseanne, something like that. And he's kind of, gotten incredibly popular in the mainstream. He's become a mainstay character actor at that point. And it feels like they just it makes sense for him to step into the role, step into not the shoes, but like the place where John Belushi would be, given John Goodman's own musical background. He's been in several bands, particularly blues bands, stuff like that. But yeah, they just really give him almost nothing to do. He's just like he's just there to kind of like, talk with Elwood.
And I think so they've already introduced Buster at this point, right? So this raises the question, is this movie supposed to be a kids movie, which is my argument, that this is a movie for children. Yes. That this is a kids movie. Again, that is why it is insane it takes place in a strip club for the first 1/4 of the movie.
Yeah, we don't just like stop by the strip club. Like they're in the strip club for a while.
Part of the plot. There are multiple scenes where the band and just ladies in very erotic clothing are standing around feeding a kid a peanut butter and jellies. Again, Tanner fantasy, just living out like I want to be taken care of by a nice group of strippers.
Smells like dog shit in here.
Don't say shit, kid. You don't need that shit, kid.
But like, I think there's no reason for any other Blues Brothers to be introduced if you're introducing Buster. The movie should be Elwood and Buster. Buster's the new Jake Blues, and Elwood should still be Elwood, right? That is, I think, a version of this movie. Yes. I think him going out on the road and getting the band back together with Buster, all that still works. The introduction of Mac, who doesn't seem to serve any function. There is no need for John Goodman to be in this movie other than maybe he was friends with people.
I'm definitely sure that they were friends. I know that after John Belushi passed, Jim Belushi took on the mantle of his brother, for better or worse. But let's face it, worse.
Worse, but that would make more sense if that role was played by him then, right? Like, because then you would be like, oh, well, like, I even at that point knew the context of John Belushi's brother has like on stage in person has just taken over the mantle, and that's fine. Out of just respect for like family and stuff, even if I know it's not the best, I would still be excited to see that show. Like, I'm seeing a Belushi, good enough. I mean, not good enough. That's not a fair thing to say. Although Jim Belushi's cool as hell. So he has his own weed strain. So he did something cooler than start a liquor thing. He started his own green fucking marijuana industry. Cool for you, dude. But and then same with Joe Morton. There's absolutely no reason for that plot line in any way at all if you're making a kid's movie. Now, if you drop the kid and then just have him be reuniting with his black cop brother, that's its own movie. That's a different movie that also could have been, I don't think good, but okay. Not the thing a John Landis should be making, but it's a movie.
I think there is like you said about the strip club stuff, it kind of feels like it was teetering even while filming on whether or not it wanted to be a R-rated movie, like a R-rated comedy like the first Blues Brothers, or if they wanted to make it PG-13, a more family friendly version.
I would argue they want to make it PG-13 from one line in the scene when the Russians come into the strip club. They shoot at the ceiling, and the Russian mob yells, "Everybody leave now, please."
I do love overly polite Russian mobsters, because you know that politeness is only going so far. And if you
and then they do my favorite thing one of my favorite cliches, which is they shoot up a lot of the fixtures in the place and then pour gasoline on it and light it on fire. You didn't need to, if you're going to just burn it down, you didn't need to shoot the bar. You don't need to shoot the lights out. You're about to light the building on fire, which they do and succeed at burning down.
Yeah. And, and I love Russian mobsters in things because, as we've established, I'm a crime fan. And the Russian mob is one of the most fucked up mobs there has ever been. Watch Eastern Promises. But yeah, they'll fucking skin you alive, like literally.
Yeah, I mean, even if you're a journalist and speak ill of the Russian government, they skin you alive. So who knows? Maybe it's just a Russian thing.
Yes. But yeah, they go on. They go to
well, essentially, Willie lost his business, so he's got nothing anymore. So now he has to join the band, and now we're on the series of getting the band backs together.
Yeah, which doesn't take too long because they're all in one place.
Yeah, for the most part, they seem to all have just stayed in Chicago, and he just kind of jumps to a couple different suburbs to pick everybody up. It's not like the first one where they kind of have to go out of their way to get to all of them.
Yeah, and they do. I think my least favorite part of this movie was the respect scene, because it just is there to remind you that, hey, remember the first movie where Aretha Franklin sung Respect?
Well, everything in this movie is to remind you of the first one. It fails at all of them.
Oh yeah, the fucking bluesgrass concert, no, what else is like,
hell, even the guy who
the revival tent, the church scene.
I love that scene, but
it's good. It's
but even the guy who runs the bar where they get the bottles thrown at him in the first movie, he is at he runs the restaurant that he does the shaving cream. Even like that, nothing character from the first one has a cameo in this one. That's why I don't find the Aretha Franklin one as egregious as you do. I think. I think it's a not very good version of that song, but in the first one, she just came out and sang "Think." That was all she did in the first one. It's not like this was functionally any different.
No, but that's the thing is this. Yeah, it wasn't functional. Here's the thing. I think the movie was made like the only story ideas they got, like, okay, how do we that's the problem with a lot of legacy sequels, especially ones that are 20 years after the first one, is that a lot of the movies are just references to the movie that came before it. It's why we didn't need a fucking Dumb and Dumber 2 and shit like that,
18 years apart.
18 years apart. Okay, yeah. So pretty much it's
legal.
Jesus Christ, Tanner.
We're
just gonna move past that one.
No, they do the same. So they do I think the one that's even worse, because you think this is a disservice to Aretha Franklin. So one of the most iconic scenes from the first movie, I think, is when they get the trumpet player in the restaurant, where they're just being the worst patrons, and then you get the Belushi going, "How much for the women and the children?" Right? You get all there's so many iconic sequences in that. And part
fucking
alone.
Pee Wee Herman is in that scene.
Yeah, and in this one they do it at the Russian mob's funeral, and it's not it's like, oh yeah, you're just doing the same scene, but like this is bad. All what I'm seeing here is not funny. It's terrible, and I don't even think it's just the John Belushi of it all. It's just like, well, this is distasteful. Like, I don't like picking on people who are at a funeral, even though they're criminals. someone is dead and they are paying their respects. At least in the other one, like, oh yeah, they're insulting fancy people, like wealthy, rich people, right? Like, so like, that's like oh yeah, I love these like bum Chicago guys going in this fancy restaurant and fucking with all these rich people because fuck the wealthy. And in this one, like, even though it's Russian mobsters, well, yeah, they show them all crying and grieving, like, and then you're just being mean. And also, that's his job. Like, I don't know what his job is. He's the limo driver for the dead body. I don't fully know what his job was that they took away from him. He had like fishtails on his coat. I don't know what his job is. What is his job?
I don't know. I wasn't paying attention.
I was, and I don't know. What does he do at the? What do you know who you see when you're at the cemetery putting a body into the ground? Nobody, none of the staff from the cemetery is really going to be seen except for the one person who opens the gate and tells you where to drive. You don't have some staff waiting there. Well, they are. They just are tasteful and don't have them where you can see them. Like, they wait for everyone to leave before they shove all the dirt on your loved ones. Like, that's just how it works. There's some tact. He was not dressed to be shoveling dirt, so I don't know what he was doing there.
Yeah.
And then they go to the radio station to get the bass player and the other guitarist. The other good one is they go to a sex phone store to get their keyboardist, a sex call-in line with Wilson Pickett and Johnny Lang. You know, we all wanted a Twinkie 16-year-old to show up and yell blues at us.
Yeah, who is that? Has to be somebody, right?
It's Johnny Lang.
It's who?
Johnny Lang. He was huge in the 90s. Like around the same time as why am I forgetting the name? They sing Hook. They do the song in this Blues Traveler, right? Around there was the big blues resurgence that kind of happened at the tail end of the big band revival. And Johnny Lang was like a 16-year-old guitar playing prodigy. Think like John Mayer without the weird John Mayer stuff. But then he's always shocking when you see him because he is like an 8-pound, long-haired, blonde. Like, he looks like a heroined out Kurt Cobain, except he's not. He's by all accounts a fairly decent, cool guy. But no, he's at the time would have been as big of a name as like a Wilson Pickett in the blues community.
Yeah. There was that revival. And, Blues Traveler obviously is in the movie.
And John Popper is the accordion player for all of Buster. Every time Buster plays the harmonica, it's actually John Popper.
Yeah, so they get the band back together. They do some gigs. They get chased around by Joe Morton.
Well, they do that whole song and dance number in the phone sex place. I just feel like, again, I'm coming at this as it is a children's movie. It's a movie that should be about Buster. And again, we took Buster to a phone sex place.
To be fair, though, there are a lot of kids' movies from the 90s that are not even like, oh, now we would consider it inappropriate. No, they were inappropriate then. What was the one where Melanie Griffith and Ed I forget his name, but basically she's a prostitute who a little kid hires to like just hang out with them.
I have no idea what this is. Sounds great. It's not too far off of the plot from Risky Business, which is also about a little kid. A child is a child. Tom Cruise is playing a child in Risky Business who buys a prostitute. He is still a kid.
Yeah. Let me see if I can find it.
This movie is just so horny without having any sexuality in it, and it's fucking weird.
It is like an old man horny. If we're being honest.
It is like, it's like an alien would be like, I've written down what horny is, and I think this is it. And
by the way, the movie is Milk Money.
Oh God, what a terrible title! Ugh.
Yeah. Oh. See, now you're grossed out. Yeah, now you understand why.
That was all fine until you called it Milk Money. Ugh.
Ugh. Okay, so.
Ugh, Milk Money. They play the bluegrass show. They have to paint the car at one point. There's the really bad car stunt with the model, the little tiny toy car that does the 3 loops. Then they sing Ghost Riders in the Sky, which is cool, except Max Landis is the mocap actor for the Ghost Riders.
Really?
Yeah. So there's multiple references to Max Landis in this movie, which also suck. Suck so hard.
We'll put off the Landis hate until after we're done with the synopsis.
Well, I don't want to go too deep into it, but it just sucks that it's there. It just makes it harder to rewatch this. After the bluegrass thing, they go to the tent revival, which I love that sequence. I like the song. I like the Joe Morton transformation in this.
See, time. That's the part I didn't like, where
the revelation of Jesus.
Now, I think the thing you were talking about, whether if it was just Dan Aykroyd and Joel Morton, it would have been a more gradual thing, but it just happens. His character flips.
It happens because it needs to happen at this point in the story, not because it makes sense or is character motivated. Again, it's an absolute terrible script. Like it really makes you appreciate how well crafted the first one is and how difficult this kind of movie is. But
it makes you also think like, hey, maybe a Ghostbusters 3 that was written by Dan Aykroyd wouldn't have been a good idea.
I mean, he's had a lot of input in the recent ones, and they're bad. I like the answer the call, but I do not like. I really hate it. This newest one. I do. All right, so picture this. You're Joe Morton, right? You know you're going to be in Blues Brothers. You've been cast in it. You are told you got to sing. You can sing, but you're not like a singer because you're an actor. You don't have to be everything. And then they hand you a microphone. For a lot of these, they do try to sing like live, right? Because there is something you can sense. The backing vocals, the backing music track might be recorded, but there is something about live music. I think Joe Morton's energy in this really sounds like he's singing live, so it's very impressive. Except he has to be on the stage singing with James Brown. Which is just like hey, look, I'm sorry, Joe Morton. I love you as an actor. I love you as an actor. It's not fair to ask any human being to stand on a stage and like, well, you need to just sing as well as James Brown. So just, do that. Good luck looking good. Like good luck looking like you are skilled when you're next to James fucking Brown. So I felt really bad. Like I love that song. I love the music of that whole one. I think Joe Morton sings it really well. It was sad to watch only because I felt so bad for him. I'm like, oh Christ, that's a tough ask. That's like saying, anyway, Channing Tatum, you're great, but we need you to open for Beyonce. Good luck with that. Cool. I have nothing but respect for both of you, but you're not going to succeed. You can't do this. I felt bad for him. Anyway, I love that song.
Yeah, hey, little girl who just took up tap dancing, you're doing a great job, but I'm going to put you right next to Gregory Hines. How's that?
Then they head down to the actual plot, which was they're trying to get to this music festival in Nolens. I will say, what is her name?
And this is the Erykah Badu scene. But before the tent revival thing, there is like a all is lost moment that also felt like it was there because it had to be there. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Well, they did the sequence where because before this we did miss the Nazis, so we should probably go back a little bit when they were on
some Nazis. They do
the sequence in they're at the motel on the road because that's when they meet Blues Traveler. And they play Maybe I'm Wrong, which is also one of the songs I really like in this soundtrack. So they play Maybe I'm Wrong because John Popper's like, oh, you're Elwood Blues, like you're Why I Do This, which feels very sincere.
It seems like actually, that.
And then he's like, would you like to come and see us play? And like, we're right around the corner. And then he lies to him where it doesn't even come off as like fun. It just comes off as like, as a guy who really lives and breathes, but especially because like Elwood lives and breathes music, right? Like he's always talking about how music changes your soul and it's this healing thing. Seems like a anti like Blues Brothers mentality to like, yeah, fuck that guy though. Especially because like they're good. And then because then the cops have a roadblock on a bridge, so they go under the water because the Bluesmobile, again, it's a kid's movie, so of course if you just roll up the window, your car can drive under a river because this movie is for children. And that's just children logic, and that's totally cool. And then we cut to the white nationalists, Confederates fighting the commie socialists, Chinese Russian invasion. The amount of trigger words that they just used, which I understand at the time was all a joke of they're just hitting all of them, but the fact that that is our day-to-day lives now is
Well,
insane.
the thing about to get a little bit into, and like when I say like the history, it's more of a thing like, I kind of have heard, looked into it, but like, I mean, Oklahoma City bombing was just a couple of years prior to that. We were seeing a new absurd a surge in right wing extremism. This, a lot of it came from the just FBI's deadly mishandling of the Waco situation. Um, so I think it was actually in the zeitgeist at the time.
I have no doubt there were in Iowa, there were Nazi rallies going on at this time in public places. Like, I remember specifically there was a Klan rally at the mall I used to go to as a kid. Like this was not not present. I mean, it was literally the Klan for me, which, in all things I'm grateful for, we're not quite there yet. Now they just wear normal people clothes.
Yeah, I think that's the most insidious thing, is that they've
gone mainstream.
Gone mainstream farther than, like, a Rush Limbaugh even. By the way, I remembered this. There is a picture of Joe Popper. And I don't even know how I can preface this. I'm just gonna show you. Because John Popper looks like a sword guy, and he definitely is a sword guy.
Yeah, he's got sword guy energy.
Yeah. But yeah,
I really like Daryl Hammond, and like I like him all the time. I do think he is funny in this. I love when the boat comes up and he's like, "No, don't shoot it," because the boat's full of explosives. Like, I do like that. Like, everyone is dumb, and he's the one who's like, "Wait, you're all idiots." Like, and then I do, again, they're just replicating the first movie. Well, now the cops are after him. Now the Nazis are after him. Now some gangsters are like, it's everybody is on their tail. We do get a giant car crash because there has to be one in a Blues Brothers movie.
Yeah, that was another thing of just like, guys, this was funny in the first one because nobody had actually done something like this.
Well, and you know why it's not funny in the second one, and I mean this specifically, is because it cuts to all of them coming out of the cars to show they're all safe.
Yeah.
The first one, like, doesn't do that. The cars just go off, and it's so unrealistic the way all these cars get launched that you can laugh, and it's just like goofy, and you get that it's fun. And this one, they're like throwing cars with trebuchets. Like, there aren't even like engines in these cars. They are just empty shells of cars being thrown. And then they're like, well, we better show everyone getting out so that wasn't real. I think we grasped that this 30-minute car crash was not real. I think we all get that this is pretend, guys.
Yeah. But the end of this movie is them going to a plantation run by a witch played by Erykah Badu and her
who asked them to play something Caribbean. And then Jake says, or not Jake, Elwood says, we play every kind of music except Caribbean. Which is an insane thing to say as a blues group, because that's like within the genre of blues. Like, that is within the genre of music you play is this kind of music. You say you play death metal. That's weird. That would be weird if the Blues Brothers played death metal.
Yeah.
Playing Caribbean is like, yeah, of course they do. That's just part of this thing. And then in the end, like, oh, actually, we were playing funky stuff. Well, no, because it was Caribbean. Make up your mind what this scene is. Anyway, I really like that song.
Yeah. Also,
Erykah Badu rules. She's a crazy person, but she rules.
Yes.
Paul Schaefer.
Should mention, Paul Schaefer is in that sequence, is like her like right-hand man or whatever, or like butler, I don't know, and also did the music for this movie
and the first one.
Did he do? Because I tried to look that up. And the music on Wikipedia, they just say it was done by the Blues Brothers. So if he did do it, that makes sense. Of course, Paul Schaefer, for anybody who doesn't know, was David Letterman's band leader. I think the entire time for that show.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Right.
But beyond that, he was also like he did a lot of stuff on SNL. Like he played with them for a long time. He was on the SNL band for several years.
Oh, okay.
As well. Like that would have been long before Letterman, obviously.
Right.
He was around the SNL. He's just part of that culture from like the original SNL days. Like he is one of those New Yorkers. Like he's just in that group with them.
Yeah, I know when Bill Murray did like a Christmas special thing on Netflix that nobody watched, he was in it. So but yeah, they get turned into zombies for no reason and then like reappear.
Yeah, they get frozen in clay, and then the band just kind of leaves. And there is just straight up magic in this one. I feel like we did just kind of blow over.
Scene is a magic scene.
Joke, but like that also could be interpreted as maybe religious allegory. Like maybe he didn't actually rise up, right? Like you could take some artistic expression. You can't when she just magically changes everyone's costume and then freezes people, and then like it's acknowledged by other characters. At this point, no, that is also just magic, not Christ intervening and allegory. This is now like, oh, we're just doing magic then, huh? Okay.
So it's not Christ intervening in a allegorical way. What is this, an M. Night Shyamalan movie? I'll get into that. But anyway, then they go up against a band comprised of BB King, just so many people.
I don't know if you need to go through all of them. It's a bunch of people. Most of them are anti-vaxxers. So like I don't feel great about
Isaac Hayes has a he's not in this, but he's
in it.
He's in it. Okay.
He's 100% there. Yeah.
I guess I didn't clock him, and I'm a huge Isaac Hayes fan.
Yeah, you can't not. He literally sings like a solo to camera, so I don't know how you would not know him.
I must have been like, yeah.
Oh, don't worry. It's pretty hard to keep focused at that point in this movie.
Yeah. Bo Diddley, Dr. John, Lou Rawls, Jimmy Vaughn, Steve Winwood, Eric Clapton. It's one of those things where there's so many notable artists in this one band, and the thing is just like, oh yeah, the Blues Brothers aren't going to win. No, they can't win against these guys.
But also, it's not. I mean, because
it's not about winning. Like,
the ending doesn't resolve in any. So the movie doesn't care about them winning or losing, because the ending is them going running away from the cops again, and that's the end of the movie. Yeah, except he's learned to grow up, because at the end this time, Elwood says, "Nah, put on your seatbelt." And that's the last line in the movie, which sucks.
I think there's so many problems with this. I think one of the biggest problems is it feels like there's really no stakes in this movie. Like the first movie, it's to save the orphanage. It's a save the rec center movie. This movie is just Elwood fucking around like that. I interpret this as a kid's movie because I was a kid when I fucking saw it. And all of the bones of this being a kid's movie are there, but it's a shittily made kid's movie if that's the case. So my belief is there were probably 3 different scripts at some point because I'm sure they were trying forever. I know they were trying to do this for multiple years to figure out how to make this work. Right. So I feel like this is one of those, we took 3 scripts. Maybe this was even we're about to lose the rights to make the Blues Brothers. So we got to make something, or we're going to use the IP rights for it. That's why Warren Beatty just did that insane Dick Tracy thing, so he can retain the rights to Dick Tracy. Yeah, what the fuck?
Oh boy, do I want to talk about that, but I got to do more research. But that will be part of our next month, our whole discussion next month. We should do a whole fucking episode on the Dick Tracy rights and whatever this Warren Beatty thing was.
A flop episode about the movie Dick Tracy, but I don't know if I've never
maybe
seen
our
it, so
maybe our third episode.
Good.
This one we will just watch Dick Tracy for fun and then just like bring it up in our wrap up episode. I would be down. You wouldn't have to twist my arm. I think Dick Tracy rules. It's weird Warren Beatty is still trying to retain the rights so he can make it again when he's 90 years old.
And just like, we're in an age where comic book movies are like the thing. You could probably make a Dick Tracy movie on a streaming
you
site.
could, but that's why this thing he just did is crazy, because it's literally so he's not legally forced to sell the IP. So like it's literally it wasn't even made for entertainment. It was made for legal rights retention. We need to talk about it can't be this episode, but we have to talk about it.
There's just too much to get into.
Insane, and I want people to understand the craziness that is the business of movies.
And by the way, they made a Dick Tracy movie recently. It was called The Spirit. There's very little difference between The Spirit and Dick Tracy as characters. But I'd rather read something from Will Eisner than watch another Warren Beatty, who is a good director. I will say that. I'm not going to say anything bad about him.
He's a great actor too.
Yeah, great actor, great director. Just what the fuck. Anyway, I did just look this up. Apparently the movie was initially intended for Jim Belushi, but it was a scheduling conflict thing. He was he just got a deal with ABC for this show called Total Security, which I've never heard of.
Sure, that obviously predated his big. What was his show? What about Jim? I don't
According
even know.
to Jim.
According to Jim. What about
the
Bob?
one he was on for a while?
Yeah.
I wouldn't call
he
it.
He was good on that.
It was on.
No, it was. I mean, it wasn't the Ray Romano show, right? Everybody loves Raymond, but it was in that ballpark. It was King of Queensy. It was there.
Yeah. And
unfortunately, I did list shows that are all considered good. And his is not. So I guess I proved my own point wrong.
But yeah, the movie, it doesn't say any, I'm reading this and it doesn't say anything about how they started to the production of this movie or the history of it. It just talks about the movie. So I don't even know if it was because it feels like it would be a movie that Dan Aykroyd was trying to get up. Dan Aykroyd and John Landis would want to do since the Blues Brothers. So, but I don't know. Maybe they found we'll call it, everybody's saying 2000. We're gonna call it Blues Brothers 2000 in 1998.
Well, next year we'll do a month that's just all movies that end with 2000. So we'll knock all those out.
All of them?
Well, 2 of them. We'll get 2 of them out, and that'll be a fun theme.
Yeah, well, I do want to see Cherry 2000 to see if it's any good. But yeah, the movie ends with Erykah Badu turning the Russian gangsters and the Nazis into literal rats. Elwood and Buster escape. And that's it. That's pretty much it. And then the end credit sequence is more performances.
Yep.
And that's it. That's the movie.
It's not even more performance. It's a continuation of the it's just playing the same song again. What a weird choice. I'm so glad we watched it. First off,
I'm at least glad. I can't even say I'm glad I watched it. I just really dislike this movie.
I'm glad I made you watch it. I'm glad we got to talk about it. It's why I really like the way we formatted this year, only because I do love this movie.
Right,
Everything you are saying is right. I now know more of it as just from a structural standpoint, from a script standpoint, from a is this visually interesting to look at standpoint. It fails so hard. It could not fail more in any aspect. Music's still good, but that has nothing to do with the filmmaking. If you put BB King on stage playing guitar and singing, it will be good. If you put good musicians,
Aretha Franklin, the queen of soul, to fucking back in your movie, it's going to be good.
If you surround Johnny Lang with a bunch of dressers dressed up like old people doing phone sex stuff, it will be good because Johnny Lang is talented. Even though you then have to wrap your head around, wait, so what? They're just in a phone sex place then right now, huh? And just breeze past that then and just not talk about bringing a 10-year-old into a phone. We're just not okay then. Anyway, if you're 10,
there was a lot of weird sexuality in kids movies back then.
Like that's why I think this had to have been designed for. I don't think the first draft of this was a kids movie, and I think as it became more and more of a kids movie, they just forgot to take out the like, oh, maybe we shouldn't go to a strip club. You know what? Do we even need to do the strip club in this? Is that necessary? No, all right, we will. It could have just been a live music venue. It doesn't need to be a strip club. Like
just been a bar.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
there's so many things it could have been. Oh God. I love it. This movie is this. I just like that. I'm glad we talked about it. I'm glad I do love this movie and I do like defending it in its indefensibleness. But like really this has like a put your place as a 10-year-old kid who loves Blues Brothers. I am maybe one of generously, let's say 8,000 kids who were the target audience for this. And
I do think like, and just like when I was a kid, you know, my parents would show me like R-rated comedies from like when they were younger, Beverly Hills Cop and stuff like that. So I get where that love is coming from you, and also why they would decide to make it more of a kids movie, of a quote unquote family movie,
especially because people grow up, right? Like that's such a common fucking thing, right? Like we're like, well, now this director has kids. You know, M. Night Shyamalan notoriously says he went through a phase where he couldn't make horror movies anymore because he had kids. And like it was just really difficult for him to.
And unfortunately, he made Avatar. Not Avatar, The Last Airbender.
Yeah, but like when you hear him explain like I couldn't do horror anymore because I had like a 7-year-old at home and I didn't like being scary. Like I didn't like because it's just not. He's such a good family guy. So like, you know, it just, so then he pivots to, you know, The Happening where he's like, well, now I'm saying stuff with meaning, and Lady in the Water, which I love, which is like essentially a kid's book come to life. You know, it's all you know, it's a weird phase, but like it makes sense for them to go through this. I don't think Dan Aykroyd, if this is what he thinks is what kids should have, he's not a good parent.
Well, it kind of, you know, they made the and I fucking hate the title of this because it's already Coming to America. You put the number 2 in there, but the second Coming to America, I'll say Coming to America 2. Fuck it.
Yeah,
Coming to America 2.
Coming to America.
Is obviously more in the vein of the Eddie Murphy family movies of the 90s, like Dr. Dolittle and Nutty Professor,
which are all fine movies.
Yeah. So, but mainly because for a lot of inappropriateness that is in Coming to America, we kind of just grew up off of that because it was a seminal comedy.
But I'll say the first Coming to America is very family focused. Like, he does.
But you still got tits in it, and you got.
But that also feels more like a difference of time, right? Like that's just more of the tone then, and more of the. So I can respect that more than. Well, this isn't the tone of the first. The first movie is not like a kids movie. It's not for kids. But it is just a funny movie with good music, so every age can enjoy it. But even like just talking about the weird sex stuff, my image is what I think is one of the sexiest things that's ever existed, which is Carrie Fisher in the first Blues Brothers movie.
She is fantastic.
But she is hilarious and she's deeply sexy to me in that movie. But she's playing a straight up psychopath, and that's like a weird psychosexual energy to like feed off of in that.
If it was made in the 90s, it would be they would make that subplot into just an erotic thriller.
But like that, her in that movie, she's not barely dressed, she's not nude, she is powerful and scary, and all of that just makes her really sexy, right? And in this, we're in a strip club and I see asses. There are asses in front of me, and none of that is sexy. It's a little like hot because they're very attractive people, and I do think they're all very good dancers, because I'm assuming it's all, well, I clocked it. Some of the strippers are also in the sex club. Like it's the choreographers, it's the dancers,
right?
Like they have a stable of dancers, right? So obviously seeing a bunch of women, not with stripper bodies, but with professional dancer bodies, that sounded more derogatory than I meant. There is a difference between choreograph that kind of dancing and a different type of like pole dancing. They're just different things. They're different body types. And obviously it's a different presentation because nothing any of these women did was sexy. And as someone who has seen strippers, what they do is sexy. They generate different feelings in me. None of that was there. So like, why make any of it? Why all the sex in this? Yeah. Why all the, and I just can't get over it. I'll never get over it. I'll always be obsessed with it. It made 11-year-old me into a dang ass freak. A real dirty boy, a real nasty daddy, if you will.
Jesus Christ. Fuck.
Now, what exactly is the nature of your visit here, Mr. Blues?
Well, it's like this, see. I used to be in a band.
Yes.
Called the Blues Brothers.
So?
With a partner whose name was Jake Blues.
Go on.
And you are our long-lost brother.
Mr. Blues, I am an only child.
Yeah, but your real father was like a real father to me, too.
My real father?
Yeah, Curtis.
Have you noticed, Mr. Blues, that I'm an African American?
Yeah, that's okay. So was Curtis.
So it is interesting, John Landis's career at this point, because he is responsible for some of the I'll say best comedies and even not comedies of all time. I mean, just going through the list, like this is fairly early in his career too. His third feature film, Animal House.
Well, even before that, Kentucky Fried Movie rules.
I've never seen. I'll have to.
It's a sketch movie. He doesn't do a lot in it because it's a sketch thing, so it's just a bunch of different sketches.
Yeah,
but it's the Zuckers before Airplane. So, okay, so it is Airplane energy in a sketch comedy thing that has not aged great. Just keep that in mind if you ever watch it.
Right. And it's weird how Airplane has actually aged very well.
Airplane 1 has aged very well. Airplane 2 has not.
I don't think anybody liked Airplane 2.
But also Top Secret has aged really well too. I love
like
Top Secret. Yeah, Top Secret's so good.
But even his first movie, like people won't say like it's a good movie, but it's important to John Landis's career because it's where he met Stan Winston, who would do, after the Blues Brothers, do An American Werewolf in London, considered one of the greatest horror movies of all time, considered the best werewolf movie of all time.
And it's tough to say it's a horror movie. It's a comedy. Like American Werewolf in London is such a funny fucking movie.
It is.
And it's very horror comedy,
but the horror stuff is fucking terrifying. And then does Trading Places, and then the Twilight Zone movie, which should have ended his career but didn't.
Hollywood sucks.
Yeah, it's go on to do stuff like Spies Like Us and Three Amigos and Coming to America
and Thriller. That's not nothing. Right. That's an accomplishment.
It's not nothing that he did the most famous music video of all time.
He did two of the biggest music videos ever made, that and Black and White. They're literally two of the biggest, most successful music videos in the history of music videos.
It's just weird that it looks like, and I kind of believe this, that Beverly Hills Cop 3 was the breaking point for his career. I think part of that was just Eddie Murphy and him hated each other by this point.
You don't think The Stupids was a good comeback for him?
So then he does Blues Brothers 2000s. And then he has two more movies that he directs. One the same year, something called Susan's Plan. I've never heard of it. And then doesn't do another movie until 2010 with Simon Pegg and Andy Serkis called Burke and Hare, about the famous grave robbers. And
that movie sucks.
I hear it's not very good.
It should be good. They both give good performances in it. It sucks.
Yeah, and I looked at this. Well, and John Landis usually, no, he doesn't have a screenwriting credit on every movie he does, but on quite a few, and this one, isn't one of the writers. But yeah, it does seem like this was John Landis trying to remind people, oh yeah, I made good movies at one point.
And what he successfully did was remind them that this is the kind of movie I make now.
Yes.
So he did succeed in telling us all what he can do.
Yeah. Although the worst thing he probably produced was Max Landis. Well, and killing three people.
Yeah, and the Twilight Zone movie. Those are the
Yeah.
two. Those two things are unforgivable.
Yeah. But yeah, I can see, and I wish I'll have to look into this. There's very few movies that I don't like that I wanted to look into the productions of. But Blues Brothers 2000s, I do want to know, like, so why now? So why
now?
I mean,
and how do you fuck it up? You literally could recycle the plot of the first one.
Yeah, which they kind of do.
They kind of do, and yet they fuck it up. When you could just be like, yep, he has to go get all the guys in the band, and they go have to perform one last show. Oh boy, that is all you needed. That is end of plot needed to enjoy a Blues Brothers movie. He has to collect all the band members. They have to get to a big gig. They have to play the gig. That's, I believe, that's literally the plot of Magic Mike XXL, which is a great movie.
Yeah, I have been hearing mixed things about the new one, but I'm looking.
The fact that it's mixed things means it's exciting, and I want to see it more. The fact that it's not all, oh, it's bad, all it's good, where people are like, I don't know how I feel about this movie. Ooh, that's fucking exciting, isn't it? Just like the movie you saw that we'll probably talk about soon.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just one of, and Dan Aykroyd after this still had a pretty decent career. Still has one, but he's definitely switched focuses because into like more occult stuff. And Dan Aykroyd has been, was born into a family of occult investigators. So that makes sense, but also he's been regularly working as an actor. Ghostbusters Afterlife, just
that's hard to say it's an acting thing. He showed up. He literally answers the call at the start of the movie and then shows up in like the last 3 minutes of it.
And I'm looking at his Wikipedia page now. That there's a Blues Brothers 2000 reunion that they did recently on the Connors
with Buster.
Buddy is what? No. It's Dan Aykroyd.
Dan Aykroyd and John Goodman got back together. You got me all excited that Buster and John Goodman and Dan Aykroyd were all on the. And Joe Morton. Did they do all of them?
I don't know. I just saw. I doubt that it was like an actual Blues Brothers. I think it was just like, hey, buddy, you want to come on the show sometime? Yeah, sure. The kid J. Evan Bonifant. It looks like he's done stuff. Like he was in the Three Ninjas sequel. He
rad. That's tubular.
Yeah,
it's so extreme.
Apparently he was, I think, I don't know if he was a regular on Wizards of Waverly Place, but that's a title I keep hearing about, and I know nothing about it. I know it's a Disney Channel original series. So that was made in 2007. So I would not be the target audience at that point. But from what I understand, that was incredibly popular, and it doesn't look like he did anything after that. Which is fine. Like, a lot of times the best things for child actors is to just get out,
to do one and get out of the industry immediately.
Yes. Yeah. But yeah, I will say I appreciate your love for this movie. I think this is the worst movie that we've ever covered on this show.
I agree, and I still love this movie. Right. So nobody will take that away from me. This was the first time I've critically watched this movie, though. So look, I get it, but it literally didn't take away from it. But this is the first time where I'm like, oh no, this is bad script. This is a bad construction of a plot. This is not how you even segue between when. The reason I emphasized early on the scene where he gets picked up by a stripper who says, I'm one of Willie's dancers. He works at the club. He sent me to pick you up. Cut to orphanage. That's why the movie is bad. Like, because that is not how you set up that we're going to a strip club, cut to orphanage. That's not how any of this works in
There
like
isn't even a line where
storytelling.
Dan Aykroyd goes, I have somewhere I need to stop by first.
It is terrible. I loved it. It's great if you're not like paying attention and just look up when the musical performances are going on, which is traditionally how I watch this movie.
As a concert film, it's okay.
It's pretty okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's our first flop. Well, and to talk about the flop part, it at least broke even. Its budget was $30 million, made 32.1 million at the box office. But yeah, still like a movie like that is still that's not really anything major. And I and probably let me take a look compared to the first Blues Brothers. Actually, like, so that was $27 million, made $115 million.
Yeah, but how much did it make off the N64 game? Did that add any more to it?
There was
there's a pretty phenomenal. It's actually a pretty okay video game.
So is it a Blues Brothers or Blues Brothers 2000?
Oh, it is Blues Brothers 2000, the video game. Fuck.
I didn't need to know that. I didn't need to know there is a tie-in video game.
I'll send you some images for it. However you think it's going to look is not how it looks. So I'm excited to show it to
you. But yeah, it I mean, especially compared to the first one, it was a flop and considerable from what I remember, a considerable critical flop.
Why would it critically have been a flop? Isn't it a masterpiece? Isn't that what we just came across in the talking about it?
Yeah. So yeah, this is probably like the best, one of the best movies to talk about. Well, probably not. I think there's probably other ones, but like the fact that this is so near and dear to your heart is wonderful. But next week we're going to part one of, because it's kind of two movies, but it is technically was released as one movie. My choice for Flopurary.
Flopurary.
Fucking hate this. Is the 2007 Quentin Tarantino Robert Rodriguez collaboration Grindhouse. But so we're gonna talk about, oh my god, I just opened the message you gave me and Jesus Christ.
Yeah, whatever you think the Blues Brothers, everybody at home, Google the Blues Brothers 2000 N64 game, because whatever you think that game is going to look like, it's not this.
I'm gonna put in clips from the game because like Jesus Christ. But yeah, we're gonna start with Planet Terror, mainly because that's kind of the easiest to get through. I feel like, well, we'll talk.
Yeah, that's the fun one.
That's the fun one. Well, I actually have fondness for Death Proof, but we'll get into it.
We'll get into it.
Anyway, let's get into recommendations for this week. Tanner, what have you seen lately that is actually better? That is better than Blues Brothers.
Sure. Yeah, I saw one of the greatest movies I've ever seen in my entire life, so gotta give that one a shout out. Just on a whim, I had a movie on my watch list that I've always wanted to cross off, so I finally did it. I watched William Friedkin's Sorcerer last week. That movie rules. That movie's so fucking good.
I have to watch that at some point. I'm a fan of Friedkin. I'm a Friedkin freak.
Sure.
But French Connection, The Exorcist, great director.
Well, and this is his immediate follow-up to The Exorcist, so he has like, this is as blank checky as a movie can get, right? Like,
yeah, this is like they gave him carte blanche.
You can do the movie is filmed in like 3 separate South American countries because they kept getting into legal trouble and had to move. Like, he could do whatever he wanted. the big bridge scene in it was like no, they built that over a real river. Like they just built it. It's not like, I mean, it's fake in that it was not there before this. It's real in that no, it is just still a rope bridge that they just built in the middle of the jungle. The shoot was unbearable. One of the things that just blew me away that I was not expecting. So I knew a little bit that this was a high tense movie that has nothing to do with magic or wizards or anything, even though it's called Sorcerer, just for people who aren't in the know. I don't want to actually say what it's about because I just loved getting to go into this pretty much only knowing one element of this, and that it was not about magic. It is very much a grounded in reality, high stress, terrifying movie for 2 hours. But like, I was shocked that like the first 20 minutes does not have English. There's
Really?
a lot of languages. There's a lot of action going on, but it is not till over 20 minutes into the movie that it cuts to a place in America. So like, it reminded me a lot of as a big fan of The Exorcist, that whole intro to The Exorcist that nobody, like everyone kind of forgets because of everything that happens after that.
Right.
Of The Exorcist, it has that same energy of just like, oh, we're just laying all this out real clear, crystal clear in front of us. Cool. And then also you have main characters that just don't speak English throughout the whole thing. So like, just a visually cool Roy Schneider of Jaws fame and all that jazz.
With Friedkin on French Connection.
Yep. Just truly unbelievable. Like just
great actor.
Like has now just over the last year of catching some of my holes in my Schneiderverse. He is rising up to being one of my favorite actors in the history of acting after Sorcerer and all that jazz, and then Jaws being, I think, inarguably the best movie ever made. Like it's just like, oh, this dude is in 3 of the most powerful films I've ever seen. So that's probably not an accident. That there's probably and then the French Connection, I should throw that, because also a borderline perfect fucking movie. So it's weird that this guy keeps showing up in amazing movies, and I just never gave him the maybe time or respect that he so deserved.
He is one of the better parts of the Thomas Jane Punisher movie.
Yeah,
I will
in Sorcerer.
I will say though, if there is a Schneiderverse and they do a multiverse thing with it, and the evil version of Roy Scheider is probably Rob Schneider.
Yeah, that's probably a fair assessment.
Okay, yeah, that's something I need to cross off too. Like that's one of those movies that I keep hearing about is and probably could have been, in the flop category. I want to say like,
well, it is 100% a flop because it came out the day that Star Wars came out.
Oh,
so yes, it was a flop and was like pretty not well regarded critically at the time, and just through film Twitter and stuff recently, like the last 10 years, it's had people have come around on like, actually, you could argue this is maybe Freakin's best movie. And like people have really cut like, oh, it's the most tense, like perfectly crafted kind of screenplay of just like laying out like, here's the stakes, here's the tension, here's like the mounting, escalating like conflict, like all of that. It has one of the most gut-punching endings to a movie I've ever seen that really knocks the wind out of your sails. Like it really kind of like punches you in the dick. It's what a good movie. Like just, it was very much where I got done. I was like, man, fuck, they don't make movies like this though. They just don't do this anymore. And in all fairness, like people probably died on set making this, and there was a lot of like really terrible, like there's a sequence where they have to blow something up, and because this is 1978, they blow it up. Like it's not like it's like oh yeah, and that's CGI. Like no, they blew it up. I'm sure somebody was severely injured in this, but they were in South America, and I wonder how many people were okay. And how many people are just,
unfortunately, life is cheap down there.
Which is the plot of the movie. That's largely what the movie's about, and it's great. You'll love it. Honestly, I would be excited for you to see it just to hear you talk about it, because I think you would fucking love that movie.
Yeah, I'll definitely try to knock that off my list sometime. The movie I want to recommend is considerably not a flop. Didn't make a lot of money, but not a flop. And that is M. Night Shyamalan's Knock at the Cabin.
You don't make flops.
Last Airbender.
It made its money back and then some.
Yeah, and he also, I just found out about this, self-finances his movies.
Correct. He has for his last like 5.
Yeah. And this is probably one of his best movies of all time in my estimation. Um, it's in theaters right now, so you've probably seen stuff of it, but basic plot is there's a family on vacation who get a home invasion, and the home invaders, led by Dave Bautista, tell them that they need to sacrifice one person to save the entire world. And it's really tense, it's really dark. But it gets into the philosophies of sacrifice. And uh going in, I do want to say, like, if I can understand people having criticisms of the characters, but um my analysis of it is every character is allegorical. They represent something. They flat out say that about certain characters in the movie, but every main character in the movie, if you go into it thinking, oh, they're all allegories for humanity in some way, um I
Well,
think it's better.
one of the things that's been fascinating is a lot of people who have been critical of this. I wonder if they've seen it, because a lot of the criticism seems to be at the book, right? And for people who know the book has been panned a lot for its handling of some stuff. M. Night Shyamalan significantly changes a part of this book that recontextualizes everything. So like if you had issues with the book, which I would fully understand because it is a dark nihilistic ending to that book. M. Night is not a dark nihilistic human. He's actually got a gross amount of sincerity. Like he is a very sweet, kind person who has a very good outlook on he knows the world's a crazy place, but he is a man full of hope, and like his movies tend to reflect that. I do think that is reflected in the movie, that he is a more hopeful human than the book. I have not gotten to see it yet, but I know the changes it has made from the book, which is like a fundamental. The guy who wrote the book seems like an asshole, and M. Night seems like a nice person, and you can actually tell in the changes he made, like, oh yeah, this is what a kind person would do in this situation.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that, and because that sounds fascinating. I think that it is an incredibly well structured movie. It's only an hour 40 too. Like it seems like it in this day and age, a movie like this, something so dour would be 2 hours.
No, and it's smart, right? Like I don't want to be sad. I don't want to be scared and depressed for 2 hours. But if you get me in at that 90-minute range, I'm pretty good. Yeah. I'm pretty fine.
Also, essentially the movie is just a
bottle
people.
Episode. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of people in a cabin. Like there's only so much you can do with that. It is wonderfully paced. They have flashbacks that feel like it's like, the big, in between chapters of a novel. Which I always like when it's based off a book and sometimes you feel the literary structure in the movie. But it's just a great movie. All the performances are fantastic. The little girl is just adorable. It starts with her. Dave Bautista, I think, is going to get more drama roles just based off of like this and Glass Onion.
Ryan Johnson's comment on him of just like someday a Paul Thomas Anderson or someone like that will give Dave Bautista a starring role, and it will change how the world thinks about Dave Bautista. And I'm ready for it. Like, yeah. And he's ready for it.
Almost that. Like
we're right there.
Almost Dave Bautista's movie.
He plays a weird, unsuspecting character in Glass Onion, right? His character is kind of not what you think it's going to be. It's so good. He's so good in everything. Blade Runner, he's phenomenal in. Show love for Bautista, everybody.
Yeah, but also everybody else, the
Rupert
fathers
Grint.
Rupert Grint is fantastic in this. It kind of, I think he's leaning into the fact that he looks like a sleazy dude. But also, the fathers, Jonathan Groff and Ben Aldridge. I
love Groff. I'm a big Groff head.
And Groff is Groff is a guy who I just referred to as not Carrie Elwes.
That's right. You want to hear something fascinating about Groff, who
What?
is a queer man. They did cast 2 queer actors to play queer people. I know that seems like a crazy thing to have to say in 2023, but like, hey, we don't do that enough. So do that more. He's a Mennonite.
Really?
He's had a lot. So keep that in mind in this movie that's about religion and maybe about 2 homosexuals and their kind of relationships with religion. Something to think about with the actor playing that guy. Like, that guy probably had a lot to work through on this movie, huh?
Yeah, probably.
I thought you would like that little tidbit.
Also, the daughter, Christian Q, like I said, fantastic, adorable. Also the other people, Nikki Amaka, Amka Bird, and Abby Quinn. Like I said, if you have a chance, go see it in theaters. If if you don't catch it in theaters, watch it. It's a wonderful movie. It's the first entry in my favorites of 2003. So,
2023.
2023. Sorry, my favorites of 2003. Yeah. Speaking of 2003, another movie I liked, Biker Boys. If you are disappointed by how the Fast and the Furious 10 trailer looks, watch Biker Boys. It's a better
so bad.
Yeah. We'll talk about that on the, we'll you'll get my opinion on this. Fucking Jason Momoa looking like Steven Seagal. Anyway, thank you all for listening to I Love This Flick. For the podcast, I'm Josh Pfizer.
I'm Tanner Randall.
Keep watching movies, people.
I'm on
a mission. We're on a mission from God.